I don't know what is up. Oh, oop, 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 oop. It looks like it's going. Looks like it's going. We're done. Okay. Is up. Oh, oop, oh, we're here. It looks like it's going. Looks like it's going. Welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Roundup. The last couple of weeks we've been having tech difficulties, so hopefully those of you still waiting for last week's roundup, we left you with a cliffhanger. Think of it as Who Shot JR? And I don't even know if some people even know what I'm referring to. Who knows when I say who shot JR? Carol, I saw you laugh. You know. Josh, you probably don't know. Bridget, you don't know.
Why would you assume I don't know?
Okay, do you know?
No, who shot Jay?
So who shot JR? So, okay, do you guys know or remember? Man, everything is really weird today. Um, the drama series back in the, what was it, 80s, Carol, called Dallas.
Yeah,
Okay. Larry Hagman, who started out in I Dream of Jeannie fame, was the patriarch of this family, and it was, I think they made their business in oil, which would make sense in Texas. And then it was just like dramedy kind of stuff. Actually, interesting note, they had one of the very first openly gay characters on this show in the 80s and set in
hmm,
Texas. So that was really interesting. Be that as it may, there was this cliffhanger season ending. This is back in the day before videos, before streaming, before anything. And the season would end in May and then it wouldn't start up again until September. So you'd have, and that's when the summer would come with the reruns, right? So and the big thing is to leave a cliffhanger so that people would want to come back in the fall. So they had this epic one where JR gets shot and you don't know who it is. So that
hmm.
whole summer, all everybody talked about was who shot JR. I remember standing at the grocery store at the checkout with like the People magazines and all, and it was like, who shot JR? The whole summer. Nowadays, it would have become a meme. It would be a meme. I'm surprised. I bet you we could create a meme. Who shot JR? So there is a cliffhanger for last week. We're working to get it fixed so that you can find out who shot JR.
There's your there's the hot take on the 1980s TV series. We keep it fresh here at the YC. I do. There was like that era was the start of that formula, right? Where you like had a series and you ended in a cliffhanger, and then everyone was hungry for the next thing, and you had to wait for the next season and whatever. And then the Netflixification of things ruined it because really I blame Lost. There were some shows before that, but Lost was the big one where it's like every single episode is a cliffhanger, and it just takes you on this emotional roller coaster curiosity alarm the whole friggin' way through. Most disappointing series on TV ever. Lost right there.
No way.
Oh, terrible. Oh my God.
Loved it.
Kill me. I loved it too. I watched the whole thing, but because it was disappointing, I'm saying worst ever.
Why do you
And
think
that
it
because
was?
nothing happens.
Oh man,
I need more plot.
I have to
I need
read.
more. I need more. I need a real climax, Terry. TV shows and music are like sex. There has to be a real climax. Like it's just not. It just drove me nuts. No way. No way. Okay, so we're talking about pricing. Now that we're on the subject matter, since we're in that realm of reality here, I've been talking about a lot of pricing lately because our Leads to Members program that's on right now, that's the module that we're working through. And Carol and I are at a studio and we talked about some pricing here, comes up in the YC all the time. It's the endless conversation. And that's understandable. I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but sometimes there's like these waves of where pricing is on everyone's mind. And it seems to be we're in that moment a little bit right now. Maybe I'll kick it to you, Bridget. Um, yeah, what are you seeing? What are the discussions in your world around pricing right now?
Yeah, sure. I was just saying before we went live here that I've been thinking a lot about pricing since I've been sitting in on the Leads to Members group with Josh, and we've been talking about pricing the last few weeks. And sometimes I feel like the conversation that people, or just even like the internal chatter that people have, is really focused a little too much on what are you doing for pricing? Like asking not only what are my immediate neighbors doing, but just asking like generally. So you go into one of these groups that's made up of people from literally the entire world and all different currencies too, and be like, what do you guys charge for your unlimited membership? And it's I get why they ask that, and I too find that interesting. And I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place in the conversation, but I think a much more important place to even start that internal dialogue or your thought process is, what money do I need to make in order to meet the requirements of my business? How can I pay my rent every month? And what do I want for my own salary? How can I pay my staff, etc.? And what do I need to do to get there? And I think that that can be really intimidating for people because they think it has like a ton of calculations. And yes, there are, like, if you want to get really into the nitty-gritty, but what you can also do is a simple one that we did yesterday in Leads to Members, and which I just sort of do still to this day when I'm thinking about pricing, is what are my basic costs? You don't have to get too complicated, like vaguely, what is my what's my rent? What's my payroll? Those are your big ones. And then divide that by how many members you have, or how many members you think that you might have, or divide it by the price you're thinking of right now. Like, okay, I'm thinking maybe 120 for my membership. And then how many of those members do you need to cover those costs? And I will be quiet now. Sit on.
Truth, 100%. I mean, when I bought my studio, I took my total expenses. I did exactly what you said, Bridget. I knew what the price was in the area. We had our price, divided it by that, and that was my first goal for membership, was to get my costs covered by my recurring revenue. And yeah, and it was a simple formula. It's like, this is what I need to make for the studio. This is base expenses. This is what my market is with the membership. And it was 100. And so, yeah, then after that, it was gravy. And then, of course, you just want to go from there. Josh.
Yeah, the calculation you made that Bridget's talking to is you can just come up with a range if you're starting out. Like, okay, total expenses divided by number of classes I'm going to run in a year. Then you know how many dollars per class you would need to bring in to cover expenses. That's the minimum. That's your baseline. And then what's your goal revenue? So it's going to cost you 400,000 to operate, and you want to make 900,000 in sales. So the 900,000 divided by the number of classes, that's how much you should make per class. So there's your range for a class. It gives you a starting point for your conversation. And then the question is, how many people per class? Like, it's a capacity question. How many people can you fit in a class? You optimize for a 70% fill rate over time. You can start to get an idea of, like, on average, someone should be paying this many dollars per class. Or the other way to say that is, because we see this a lot, mostly in legacy studios, where it's like, in order for you to cover expenses, but definitely in order for you to hit the revenue goals that you have, people can't be in class and be paying $8. Like that actually, it doesn't in a one-off case hurt the studio, but that's actually detrimental if you start getting towards the top half of your capacity. So your pricing can't be such that that's possible, basically, or it would like be a special scenario. Someone has to come and practice 6 days a week all the time for that to be the case. But just getting smart about it. I would just echo what Bridget's saying too. Like, I think some other boutique fitness, like newer boutique fitness in the market, has resurged the conversation in the wrong direction. So Terry, I didn't read the post, so I'll let you pipe in on it. But the example would be F45. F45's model is to try to maximize the dollars per person per visit. That is their whole focus. And so it's very easy to go to an F45 and spend $40 for one class. And like F45 is cool, but it's not $40 per class cool. Like I don't think anything is, that's my opinion, but just it's interesting, but that's like made people look at it that way. And that obviously can work as a model, but from a yoga studio standpoint or something that's more of a service-based thing like yoga, I would say Pilates would be in this realm of reality as well. That doesn't build that MRR, that membership base, and that sort of like community. It doesn't create that scenario. It makes things very transactional. Which I know I've gone for a minute, Terry. The last point I think this came up. You brought it up, right, about Starbucks having this problem is that it's no longer the third space anymore because it's so transactional. People order their coffee online, come in, grab it, and leave, and then their revenue's down. So that's F45, that move, like that's the path. And so it might be profitable, but I think in the long run, it is bad for the industry to look at it that way because there is more to what's going on than just coming in and doing a class. It's not just transactional.
It really, and to your point, and by the way, I'm in the process of doing my taxes because I need to get them done before I go to Europe. I love to be saying that before I go to leave for Europe. Oh, so cool hospital. I need to get my taxes done. And I spent $800 at Starbucks last year. Anyway.
That's pretty good, Terry. That's low.
Well, it's still, you think about it, it's like $60 a month on coffee. So seriously. So anywho, be that as it may. So yes, I get particularly in Yoga Street, and this just came up. There was a conversation with one of our clients in their Slack channel, and they're getting some pushback on their proposed pricing because they want to raise the drop-in and some other things. And they straight up were told no, because there's a governing authority, and basically say we're getting a lot of pushback on it because they're like, we want drop-ins is what we want. And we don't want to be the most expensive drop-in in the city, da 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 da. And it's like it's the antithesis of what we coach to, which is you want to build your MRR because the thing, and Josh's point about becoming a third place, if you're building your model like an F45 on drop-ins, that doesn't create, I mean, so you want to create community. You're not creating community with drop-ins. Again, it's incredibly transactional, and you can't predict what, that's the beauty of MRR. It's like we know, on any given month, plus or minus, what money's coming in. Whereas with drop-ins or 10 packs or any other type, it's like you don't know. It's like, okay, 1 month you might make it, the other month you won't. So it's just really interesting that, and Bridget, you brought up the point when we were talking, goodness, excuse me, that, we really want to, if we believe that yoga can change people's lives, and which we all do, then we're trying to optimize for 2 times a week practice. And, a drop-in does not make a yoga practice. And I think something like an F45, a fitness facility, yeah, it's a different type of experience. But if you want in a yoga studio, it just seems like the antithesis of what we're going for. Carol, what's your thoughts on that? And what are you seeing and what are you thinking about that?
Well, what's coming to mind is when, we as studio owners were going through this program and we were very nervous about changing our prices and the model, that we were previously using. And yeah, I'm over there too. But what, it was scary, but it made a lot of sense to us and why we would want to do it because, of course, we believe in building that MRR. And what was interesting, because you do want to check the pricing in your area, because you don't want to go fully way outside the zone of what's happening. I mean, there would be a case for that, I suppose, if you're, for whatever reason. So you are kind of checking and it's nerve-wracking to see these other studios doing things so differently. But what I noticed is once we changed it, 1, the studio was more profitable, and 2, a year later, we went back to look at what was going on in our industry in the same area, and they had all calibrated to us. And it was like, yeah, like it just, yeah, go for it, Terry. What do you have to say about that?
Well, and every client I've worked with now in the last, almost 4 years, Josh, can you believe it? 4 years. I've worked with hundreds of studios, and the first thing I'm almost tell every single new client is raise your drop-in. It's like one of the easiest things to do. It's like before you can raise it right now because it's a drop in. And I've gotten, it's just the mindset is amazing. Getting over that mindset. They're like, oh, I can't, da, da, da. And in every single case where they did it, they're like, I said, how? Zero. It's like no push. It's like it's a drop in. And I did have one client who raised it up, and she did notice a decrease in drop ins. And I said, yes. However, let's look at the revenue portion of it. And guess what? Her revenue hadn't really gone down. What happened is, yes, she was getting fewer people in the door, but guess what they were buying? Her intro offer, which is what we were going for. So it's like, yes, she doesn't have as many new people coming in, and yes, those people that were coming were using drop-ins, but guess what? Her revenue's actually up. Number of new people coming in slightly down, but they're buying as their intro offer. So it had the intended effect was absolutely there. And it's like I always say, it's a drop in. And Josh, you said something. Oh gosh, I should have written that down. I can't remember what I was saying. I'm going to say now. But yeah, it's really interesting. Oh, I know. This kind of leads to maybe Josh, and then because then Bridget and I were talking about before we got on team is that they're so focusing on the pricing and what's my neighbor doing all this stuff that they're overlooking the one thing that supports their pricing, which is their product, which is the classes. So if they spent sometimes like if you spent this much energy with your team and building up your classes and building your product and making sure that everybody's on board, everybody's teaching to their best ability, there's a defined product and it's not just laissez-faire, then guess what? Any price you charge is going to be justified by that, which, oh, I know what I was going to say, Josh, was Carol, to your point, being like the top tier. Yeah, you could go in with that strategy. And if you have this great facility and you have all these, all these bells and whistles and you really lean into that and you make it a true like spa boutique experience. What is it? Is it Lifetime Fitness or Lifetime something I hear a lot about? They're super expensive, but they have like this amazing experience and people are spending like over $200 a month because of it. So there is a place for that, but there's a plan behind it. Josh.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to be the boutique high-end place and charge for it, like that is a technique. I think there is a case where you shouldn't raise your drop-in. If you don't want more people to do your intro and end up on your membership, so you have like a whole bunch of people who like love you and practice a whole bunch and have solid cash flow in your studio so that you can dependably predict what's happening in the future and build your business up, then you should not raise your drop-in. That would be a case where you lower it. Like, so that would be the case for where you don't do it. Like it joking aside, I would comment, here's the other thing about looking at other businesses. And this is, it sounds a little harsh, but it's more often than true than not. Like most other businesses suck. Looking at a bunch of other businesses in your market, you don't know their books. Like unless you go over there and you're like, hey, can I see your P&L? And they're fucking crushing it with huge margins and growth at 20% plus per year, then who cares what they're doing with their pricing? You don't know if it works. Worry about yourself. This is the yoga part of it too, where it's like, yeah, if you're in the middle of the yoga class and you look at the person beside you and you're like, well, that's a shit posture. Like you should fix this. That would be insane because what are you talking about? Or even that person can do the posture really, really well and I can't, and that's your concern. You're not focused on yourself. You're not focused on doing your own thing. So it's very obvious in a yoga class that the focus is on yourself and that's where the work is. It's the same thing in your business. To Carol's point, it's like, know what's going on in your market. Don't underestimate competition. Understand what's normal. But then past that, there's no more advantage to keep focused on it. It's an energy drain. And Terry, like what you're saying, like if you refocus that energy just into making your classes awesome and your team rock stars and have a better saleability and stuff, then you'll never worry about it again, the pricing of things. The last point on pricing that I would throw in here is like people don't buy your price. We want to believe that they do. And the reason we want to believe that they do is because you can control your price. You can go into your computer and change your price right now. So our logical brain says, I can control this. And if I lower my price or increase my price, it'll have this effect in my business. And we really want that to be true. And it's not that it's entirely untrue. It's just not as relevant as we want it, as we think that it is. I'm not going to go to the studio because they have an $18 drop-in versus a $20 drop-in. 20 to 40, maybe, but then why am I even looking at the drop-in in the first place? So pricing. Get your pricing straight. If you find yourself as a studio still, like if you are past the 3rd year of operation and you're still thinking and obsessing on your pricing, then you don't have a pricing model that's working for you. That's the truth. So you need a coach at that point. In the beginning, you do have to obsess on it because you've got to like calibrate it for a second. So you still need a coach then. But like if you're past year 3 and you're still like, maybe this price up, down, or I'm not profitable here, or I'm not sure, I don't know if I'm profitable if I charge this to this person, like you need a coach at that point because it's something that you want to just sort of solidify, and it foundationally supports all the rest of your sales actions.
And it's to your point about if you're in the new phases, that's just something to be mindful of, because we run across this is like having like a founder's price and saying, as long as you cancel, we'll never raise your price. Not such a good thing to say. I mean, you can say things like, we'll get this price as long as you remain a member based upon, we reserve the right to raise our prices, right? Because I dealt with a studio that bought the business and the previous owner did that. And it's just like, it's absurd. It's absurd to guarantee that you're going to lock in a rate forever. And then you've got this group of people, and in some ways too, you create this entitlement in a way. And I'm not saying not having some type of founding membership and some type of amazing thing that they get, but just be mindful that you don't use language that you get this rate forever. You need to make sure that language is you will get this rate based upon, and we reserve the right to change the rate, but you will get this rate. This is our founding rate. Nobody else is going to get it, type of thing. Because then you can get yourself into a bit of a pickle with that. And you can create problems down the road where 3 years later, they're paying this introductory rate, costs have gone up, this has gone up, and now all of a sudden you're like, wow, what do I do with these folks? So that's just something to be really mindful. Carol, I saw you smile when you said that. Do you have a
Oh yeah, it happens often, doesn't it? When we get new clients and they'll have legacy, on like half rate of what is currently the going rate at the studio for a monthly membership. And it's scary for them to try to, like, how do you do that? But I mean, we have some techniques and ideas on that. And the other thing is that when you said that too, is like buying a lifetime membership. Those people are it's so I've had a couple recently where we talked about that, and it's like they paid that one time upfront huge chunk of money, and now they're not paying anything 5 years later, 6 years later, 10 years later. So just be careful, be mindful.
Yeah, I think in that set, if you're really trying to get some cash up, I could see doing, if you want to do like a multi-year membership, like maybe a 2-year membership, to start if you want to get it, but yeah, lifetime that's like, because I think when
it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
And someone could come and debate me on this, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work in the math of the business. And then there are areas of the world, it's not in North America where we've seen it, especially in South Asia, this was a thing.
Yeah.
Those businesses are all of them. Listen, like, hear my words. All of them are fucking gone. They actually stole money from people. That's the way I look at it. It's rude. They sold these huge overpriced for the market things. People bought into it. and now they're closed. That money's gone. Now, it's not like they ran away with the money. They just burnt it
Oh
all.
yeah.
But like,
Oh yeah.
well, some of them
Some of them
did. Some
did.
of them did. Some of them did. But it's just that just doesn't work. So yeah, sell even whatever. If you're opening up your business and you got to get cash going, like sell a 5-year quote lifetime membership or something. I still think that's insane. But like, you got to charge enough for that too. Doing a 5-year membership, like we're talking about like a five, six, eight, $10,000 sale. So
And here's the downside to that too, and we've talked about this with annuals, even with like an annual sale, is that yeah, you've got this chunk of change, but remember, you have to service that
yeah,
for the year or the 5 years, which means ideally, if you've got this big chunk of change, and I guarantee you a lot of people aren't doing this, is let's say you take in $100,000 in memberships and like annuals or a multi-year. Are you putting that into a bank and then every month dripping out 1/12 of that?
yeah, no way.
No way.
No, that money's
Right?
gone. You burn it
That money's
immediately.
gone.
Yeah.
You bought it, you're using it for something else, operating whatever it is, and then 6 months, 18 months later, you're like, you're screwed. So
That's
not
debt.
it's
That's debt.
yeah.
And to your point of buying or selling a studio, then if I'm consulting someone who's looking at purchasing a studio, there's a list of about 10 or 12 questions that we ask, like outside of the like, what's the EBITDA and is it profitable, or whatever, like deeper questions to just understand the business. And that's one of them is what's the debt load to student ratio? Not actual debt load, but like how many memberships am I going to have to service in this purchase? If you sell me a 2-year membership and then someone else comes to buy the business, either you make that new owner have to be the asshole or they have to service that. And so I'm just going to deduct that off the price. So whether you're selling or not, sometimes looking at the moment of a sale helps to clarify like what's actually valuable from a sheer number sense in a business.
It's
You know,
called the assumed liabilities.
yeah, yeah,
And like not like I know my body has a report. It's called the unexpired packages where you can see what do you have in that liability. And sometimes I'm like, oh my God, it's huge. And a lot of that also can be because the other thing we coach to when you're talking about pricing is I'm a huge proponent, unless it's a very, very, very specific instance, activates data purchase. Because I was an assumed liability report for a client. They had probably $5,000 or $6,000 in class cards that they sold 6, 7 years ago
yeah. Class cards need to
that
start right away.
they never had started them. So if it's activate on data first visit, and they never come in and take that first visit, that money is like on the books and you still have that as an assumed liability, which is why you wanted to activate data purchase. But so anyway, so that becomes like to Josh's point, and it can be a negotiating point when you buy it. Like when I bought my studio, I assumed the liabilities. And when I sold my studio, the new owner assumed those liabilities. Carol,
Yeah.
what was it for you?
Sorry, I was checking something else for the onsite. For us, we did do a lot of starts upon first visit, to be honest. And when we ran the report when we were selling, there was, some stuff out there that wasn't great. So you live and you learn, right? But that's why you get a coach now and fix those things before you get into that situation.
I want to take us, Terry, back to product for a second. So,
Yeah.
or over to products. So, pricing is a function of your profit margin and what you want to make. It's a function of making sure it's affordable, like it's sustainable to run your business. It's a function of your capacity. Like
Mhm.
if you have a 400 square foot room versus a 1,500 square foot room, pricing might look different. You have a different capacity situation going on. Or if we're talking outside of yoga, right? Pilates is the easy example. If you're a Pilates reformer, it's 230 square feet per person. Like you have to charge more per month because you can't put more people in there, sort of thing. So even their style of yoga can impact that. If you're old school, original hot yoga class, you can cram it pretty full. Vinyasa, you need a little more space. If you're doing like restorative or yin with a lot of bolsters and props and stuff, you need more space still. So that'll impacts it. But people don't buy your pricing, they buy your product, and your pricing has an alignment with your product, right? So in any case, the working on the product part, I think, is important. What I would bring to the table is the idea of product definition.
Yeah.
So this is everything from like your class description, even your teacher bios, but what is it? So if you're at a studio and there's 2 or 3 styles of class, or even a really good example of this would be the Vinyasa studio that just does Vinyasa, but then they have 15 class types on their website. And it's like, are they really 15 different classes? Probably not. There's maybe 3 in there or something. But the point of like defining it is so that you can explain it to people, so that you can sell it, because the human brain is searching for clarity above everything else. We've all heard the negative impact of that. If you confuse, you lose. But the more deep sort of thought on that is, if I don't understand it, it's hard for me to buy it. I very likely won't purchase it. So what is the product? From my perspective as your consumer, like, what is it? Why do I want it? And then how do I buy it? Then the price comes in. What's the benefit of it? What's the aspirational identity? What does it solve for me? And just to be really clear, I'm really clear about, really curious about your thought on this, Bridget. But like to say like, oh, it's yoga, so it's like peace of mind and anxiety reduction or stress relief and good community and stretching and a bit of a workout. Yeah, that's all true. But it's also true at the place down the street and the place across the street and in your other class. So that's not clarifying. That's just the generic yoga's good for you story. Like, it needs more specificity in there.
I agree. It does need more specificity. um, I think that, yeah, I think that my industry specifically, or my specific niche of the market, which is Vinyasa yoga, and studios like us can definitely fall into this trap of, like you said, the 30 different types of vinyasa and a little bit of lack of specificity. I think one of the places that we have tried to solve for this and dive into a little bit, and I think that other people can too, is where, like, what is this what is the special sort of feeling that you are offering your community specifically? Our big thing is that we are a no pressure, of course the words are all failing me now, but we have them written down. There's like no pressure, no competition, and what is the third one? No judgment, no pressure, no competition, no judgment. And we build everything around that. We build our training for our teachers around that. We build our training for our staff around that. And some people are selling something different, and that's fine. I have no judgment about that. Some people are selling, like, everyone here looks amazing. They wear really like adorable, expensive yoga clothes, and we offer this like high-end premium like experience where everyone's super clean and like, looks really similar. Whatever, it's not my vibe, but it's totally fine. It's important for you to know if that is your vibe. So that's sort of one of the places that we sort of tackle that. But there's other ways too. I'm really curious about what you two think.
Terry making me come off mic here, I can tell. There's a lot going on around here. Yeah, differentiating your classes, it is really easy to fall in the trap of this is all good for you. It all makes you feel good. Like that's pretty much what we're all selling, right? So it's really interesting though, like I'm being at this onsite, like have you asked? Like have you as the owner asked your team, like, hey, if somebody came in and wanted to know the difference between these classes, or like why take one over the other, or what are you looking for in your practice? Oh, let me recommend this because it's going to, serve you in that way. Are they trained enough to do that? That's been, that's something to really look into. And if you have very similar, like using vinyasa as an example, like I think that might be something that would flag, like, are these actually really all the same thing? You know, can I just call it the one thing and make it very clear that this is what we do? Um, but when you do have very different sort of modalities, then you can be a little bit more clear and differentiate them in those ways, right? Like, what is this serving? What is the purpose? And just make sure your team is on board with that too.
Yeah, truth, 100%. I've had, I don't know, if you have had this experience, Carol, and now I will straight up tell people, ask them, what is this class? And a lot of times I ask and I hear crickets. And I say, look, then that's the problem. If you as the owner have to think about what this class is, that's a product problem, right? Is you should instantaneously be able to say, this class is for this avatar that does this, this, and this. Bridget, you and I had a conversation about this. Well, we had a conversation about this sometime recently. I was asking you, I think it's Carol after you, I think it was just Tuesday, whatever it was. Carol, you had to jump off after our call on Tuesday. And I was asking Bridget specifically about vinyasa, right? This whole one movement, one breath kind of thing. And what exactly does that mean? Because I've been in a class where it's like one movement, one breath, and it's like I feel like it's like speed vinyasa, and it's like holy hell, right? It's like this is, and then other class. So Bridget, I love what you said about that.
Yeah. Well, it's such an important part of it, and this is why it's so tough. I definitely think that you can be a great studio owner without being a teacher. But if you aren't a teacher of the main modality of your studio, I think you need a pretty solid consultant, like someone who teaches yoga who can help you with this stuff. Because I would say this, I have been traveling so much since I left San Diego a few months ago now. And I've been to a bunch of studios in my hometown where I was staying. I haven't been to any here in Scotland yet, but I'm looking forward to it once we get more into the city. But I like I did not go to one solid vinyasa class the entire time. And it sucked because I was buying all these intro offers. So I was spending like $50 on one class. And there was just so much to be left to be desired. And I think that this comes from lack of knowledge on the studio owner's part. And it also comes from a lack of ability to mentor your teachers. And you need both of those things. And I think that that's really missing. And I know that from experience because I was missing that for many years as a studio owner. And now it's like my favorite thing and my number one focus, like professionalizing yoga teachers and streamlining your product. But I think this is a huge, huge hole in yoga studio ownership, especially vinyasa studios.
Yeah, I think what you were saying, it really resonated with me because it is true. I know it is. Yes, because the product is that's what we're selling, and I think this is where I see a lot is even sometimes when they're employees versus independent contractors, it's like the studio owner's like, well, just let teachers come in and teach whatever their class is and then all of a sudden you just have, like you said, that's how you end up with 16 different versions of vinyasa, because it's like, oh, this is my class description, and Carol goes, this is mine, and Bridget, this is mine. No, you decide what type of environment, like you said, Bridget, that you want to create. And it's more like, this is how we teach. This is how we teach vinyasa at my studio. It's this. Are you able to teach that way? I want you to build me a sequence this way and do a demo that way. Right. And show me that you can work into our studio. And I think that goes for whether it's an employee or an independent contractor, because I know sometimes with independent contractors, it's like studio directors will just let them teach whatever, it's their class. And yes, technically it is because they're IC. However, you can still have like sort of the rules of the road in a way. Like we want our classes to fit in this type of structure. So you don't have these wild swings. Because I have a client right now where all the teachers are ICs, and there is a bit of a problem because the classes are so wildly different. And it's really hard to advertise, and it's really hard to build because it's just there's too much difference between each of the classes. Now, if you're fine with that, okay, and that's maybe where the whole drop-in thing comes in. But you're not going to be, it's way more challenging to have people have memberships.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to speak to, is the importance of it, because I don't want it to sound like you just do it because it's my way or the highway or whatever, but it's because how is someone going to build a sustainable yoga practice? This is what we talk about all the time on my staff, is like, and you actually said this earlier, Terry, in almost the exact words I say it to my staff. So maybe I got it from you at some point, but like a random class here or there does not a transformative yoga practice make. And that is part of our mission, is a transformative yoga practice. And if you have Kundalini one day, which is a beautiful practice, and then like a random vinyasa that doesn't have much structure the next day, it's like no one's learning skills. No one's like, we're not creating a sense of safety. We're not creating a place where people can really transform. And that's why it matters to have all, like, not the exact same, not stock, perfect, whatever. But that is why consistency matters, because it helps people like be in an environment where they can actually transform. And that's what your product is.
Yeah. We did talk, when we were coaching together, we did talk about that. Oh, Kara, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and also it goes back to the trust that you create between you and your students. Because if I see this on the schedule, I can be very confident of what I'm walking into, because now you've created like, okay, this is typically what this class looks like. It shouldn't be way off base. And, me walking in and being like, why that was weird. That's what we don't want. We want to create that trust as well.
Yeah, that's a really good call out. You are creating the trust with the clients. And I think, Bridget, way back when you and I were working together, we did talk about, particularly in the vinyasa world, is it to have a structure, like you were saying, Carol. Like, here's a basic outline of a class that we start this way, we build to a peak posture, we come down, we build, and so that way, like you said, Carol, that there is a basic structure. There's like an arc to the class that people can, and then within that, the teachers can have their individual flavors. And I even had a studio director, she had done that to the point, and I actually think, and I did have this experience. We talked about this with one client, and she then tried it out with one of her newer teachers, and the newer teacher was like, oh, this is great. Because I think oftentimes for new teachers, I think they want to, like, not intentionally, but they're like showing off and maybe trying to, in more in the vinyasa world, as again, the reason I say that, because in the Bikram world, we know exactly what it is, but in that the transitions and not, oh, I want to do this posture and this posture and this posture, where it's like, what are the basics? Let's kind of strip it down. So I think it helps create, like you said, the foundational teachers. And even if, like, we're in the independent contractor world, it's like, this is how we teach here. Are you a good fit for that? Just because they're an independent contractor doesn't mean you can't have guardrails as to what the expectations are. So, we expect the classes to be this, we expect them to be in this type of sequence. We don't do this, we do this, that type of thing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
100%. I mean, this is your product. You should be very clear of what that product is, and all the teachers should be on board with that. And even, an independent contractor, we rarely had even visiting teachers come in, because I was like, I don't know you. I don't know what kind of class you're teaching. Like, I wanted to be very, I don't know if it's controlling, but like, I wanted to have the type of people teaching that I wanted teaching. And so there was always an audition. I never let somebody just roll up and like teach that I didn't know well. So product is key.
And here's the thing, you can control the product. That's what you're selling. Think of Steve
Yeah.
Jobs.
Mhm.
Apple is a lot where Apple is because Steve Jobs demanded it.
Mhm.
He had a very clear vision of what he wanted Apple to be, what products he wanted, what they were supposed to look like. And I'm not an Apple. We have this running. I don't. Yeah, it's sort of a family feud kind of thing between Josh and Mara and myself because they're all Apple and da da da. Anyway, and I'm Android. I'm Windows based. Blah blah blah. But I have to say, you pick up an Apple product, it's beautiful.
Mm.
The phone. It's like the keyboards. It's like it is. They're beautiful. I will say that, and that I think is a lot because of Steve Jobs, of his vision for the product, right? So you can and should control your product, right?
Yes, totally. Yeah, we have like um I've got like tons of looms and like all these videos and worksheets and like pages and pages of like class guidelines and all that stuff. And it's so fun. And like I love, yeah, like it was fun and also just rewarding to create. And I have never since I when I implemented this app, I will say I got pushback from my
I remember
existing instructor. Oh my God, Terry, we still
that's
call
what
it
we were
teacher
working
Matt
with.
Gate.
Yeah, it was
Oh my
like,
God, it was so bad.
it was so bad. I remember that.
I had a really, yeah, it was a bummer group of people. It's a whole conversation for another day, but um, that does sometimes happen with, you'll definitely have like a portion of your staff that might respond poorly when something changes because they signed on for something else, which is fine. That's totally fine. But ever since, like everyone I've hired since then has said, like across the board, maybe not every single person, but I get feedback all the time. I love that you have all this laid out for us. I've never had this much support, this much mentorship, this much guidance from a studio owner before. I'm learning so much about teaching. Like, this is what I've been craving. Like, literally, these are the words that people are saying to me on a regular basis as we hire new people. And those are the kind of people I want on my staff.
I mean, yeah, 100%. I think that's great. I mean, that is the one part of being like a Bikram studio is that you pretty know the product's very defined. However, even in a Bikram studio, and particularly nowadays, there can be variations. And so it's like you still even want to, and Carol, I don't know what you did at your studio, but you can still have, this is what I expect the class to be like, because there are some students, it's like, I was like, I'm fine when you want to drink water, right? That whole don't drink water thing. It's like, so in my studio, these are within the Bikram framework. I expect the class to be taught how it's supposed to be taught, and these are the things that we don't have a lot of don'ts about, right? What about what was your experience with that, Carol?
Yeah, I mean, just little things even. Like had a teacher that would start to turn the lights off before the final breathing exercise. Excuse me. And I was like, no, we are all consistently going to do it this way. It just, I mean, I know it was subtle and probably a lot of people didn't even notice, but I noticed. And I found it to be like, why? Or you need to differentiate your class in some way? Why? Like, I don't understand. But yeah, there's definitely still ways to, clarify what you want,
Yeah,
no matter what the modality is.
yeah.
So,
I think I shared this with you guys uh, earlier in the year. Is I went to the very beginning of the year. I went to a hot studio down in Tennessee, and because one of my besties is doing their 26 and 2 YTT right now, and it's really sort of cool because it'll be 20 years this year that since I went to Bikram training. And my friend Mel, she was like my only friend that came down to LA from the Bay Area. She visited me during training. She came down and hung out a weekend. Then she came to my graduation and she was in my very first class, which by the way was 100 minutes. And it's not because I talk slow, Carol. It's like, oh my gosh. Anyway, so she's going through, and ever since then, she has wanted to be a Bikram teacher. Talk about having a goal and work, and just working and having faith that will happen. And so now this year, and so I'll be taking her first class sometime in May, which I just think is sort of like full circle kind of thing. I forgot where I was
I
going with
love
this.
that.
I totally forgot where I was going. Oh my God, this is what happens to me. 7. Anyway,
So
so yes. Okay, this is making me want to go practice yoga. I know, 100%. You'll have to keep us. Now, here's an interesting question, Bridget. With all the traveling and stuff that you're doing, how have you been finding classes?
Yeah, Google Maps and Google. Actually, when I like way back in the day, I used to use the MindBody app, and that's why we signed with MindBody when we
Right.
first opened up. But then I learned that actually most people don't do that. Like that's a very, and now especially,
So it's
I
mostly
don't
just
think that
Google
that's
searches.
common. Yeah, so I just Google map it, and then when I was back in Minneapolis, where I am, I will go back there next week too and be there for a few more weeks. I have been asking for recommendations and stuff. And do you know the funny thing is, I end up going to hot studios, not necessarily Bikram, but um, for whatever reason, maybe you guys know, heated studios tend to be better. Yes, Mauve, they have one in Minneapolis, and that was recommended to me. I don't actually, I would prefer non-heated yoga, but they have better vinyasa. And I don't know why. They have better systems, they have better, um, but at a non-heated studio, I cannot get a good, solid class, and it's driving me nuts. But I don't only do vinyasa. Like when I practice with my teacher, she's a forest yoga teacher, and I'll do that too. But again, just not having a really good teacher as well. As long guidelines are really good for classes, but nothing can beat like a really, really good teacher. So that's another interesting thing that someday I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on is just like why are the hot studios, the heated vinyasa, why are they better? Like why are they doing something better and why aren't we all doing it?
I have a theory on that, and Carol, you can see what you feel about this. Is that because a lot of heated studios have the owners have like could be grounded in Bikram. And the way Bikram teachers are taught to teach is verbal commands. And we don't demonstrate. And we don't touch, which is sort of ironic with the whole Bikram thing, but that's a whole nother thing. But so it's it's like we don't touch, we don't do hands-on corrections. Occasionally, maybe just like a little finger point, but no hands-on corrections. We don't demonstrate. Occasionally you may, but it's not like a vinyasa class. And we use verbal commands. So I think, and I mentioned this before, is that one of the best vinyasa classes I took was at a hot studio that does not offer Bikram at all, any version of 26 and 2, but the owner practiced Bikram and went to Bikram teacher training. So I could see her command directives, and we talked about this the other day, Bridget, when you and I were talking, it's like spiral your inner chakra, shining your light towards the moon and spread your wings. It's like move your rib cage, stretch your arms. Right? So it's like I think maybe that's just a general theory, and that it's just like because if it's grounded in Bikram or some version of 26 and 2, the style of teaching we're trained towards is operational commands as opposed to, I think, maybe some traditional vinyasa training. Having never been to a vinyasa training, I can't speak to that, but that's my sense. And I see you shaking your head like this. Carol, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree a lot with that because when I first, I'd only done the original hot yoga forever and ever and ever. And when I went to, it was actually Ellen who bought my studio, she owned another style, a yoga studio 20 miles away that did something else. And we were all like, I guess a contingency of us all went over and took her class. And we were thinking like how much we loved it. And somebody piped in and said, it's because she's also Bikram trained. And so she's using operational command. And I was like, yes, because it's very clear to me what I need to do. Like, you're right. It's not like triangle, go, or, that kind of that thing. It's like, do this, do that, move to the next thing. And so I can agree. And I can appreciate sometimes whenever I've taken classes where they're like, breathe through your armpits, sometimes that feels, I get what they're saying, So I think you can be a good teacher and use that kind of stuff too. It's also like, what are you looking for, So.
And I think true, there's a place for that for sure. It's just always be mindful of, we've talked about this a lot, it's the curse of knowledge, right? Always preaching with that beginner's mind, unless you have a room of people that have been practicing a long time. But typically, you have a room with beginner people not done yet. It's like always going with that beginner's mindset. And particularly for the beginners, is that cue something that they will understand? And one of my big things is like, I don't know. It's just like when a teacher, I just feel they're showing off. When a teacher just starts throwing out all the anatomy. It's like, now, hell, I've done anatomy, and I'm like, what does that, I'm like, did you really need to say that? I think sometimes it's just like they're trying to show off that they know a lot about anatomy, and then forgetting that there are people out there that don't even know what a hamstring is.
Well, I think it goes back to like the curse of knowledge, right? Because
Right.
I don't know if we would do a workshop and all the teachers would get really like excited about the things that they learned. And then all of a sudden they go into class, people who hadn't been in the workshop are not trained in anything, and they start using all these terms that like, it's not for the average student. This
Yeah.
is like for your knowledge as a teacher, but you can't start talking about your latissimus dorsi and that kind of stuff in class.
I mean, unless I've been in classes where the instructor's really good, it's like they say that those are the muscles that run down your back that help with it. Oh,
Right, you clarify.
clarify.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like if they're just saying, and we always say, the intercostal muscles, those are the muscles between the rib
Yeah.
cage, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to give a little anatomy if you're giving the context of what it is, right? And never assume that someone knows what a bicep is, or a tricep, or a quadricep, or a hamstring, right? Because we think everybody does, but I was in a class one time and this woman, let's say hamstring. Right. And I said, it's the muscle, the back of the thigh. Though. She goes, oh, okay. Yeah, that way. Yeah. Oh, okay. That makes sense to me, kind of thing. So, yeah. Anyway. All right. Well, I'm Carol. You probably got to bounce because you're out in Montana, right?
I
Yes.
am. Yep, we're in Montana.
And
We're in
you're
Bozeman.
from Bozeman, Montana.
Uh,
And I've got a call coming up here. And what time is it for you, Bridget, now?
4:39
Oh, okay.
p.m.
So not that.
So it's almost cocktail hour for me. So
It's
I've got
almost
to
cocktail.
finish up my
Finish up your
finish up
day.
my work and
Well, you'll have to post
good.
about when you do find some yoga in Scotland,
I will.
and let us know how that goes. And it's too bad that we didn't know before. That Bridget's in UK right now, but she's going to be when I'm in London and Portugal. You're going to be like
Yeah, we're going down to Paris and Paris and Rome. The one, yeah, it's so annoying. Yeah, but
there's so
really,
much.
it's great for all of us. But
Okay. All right. Well,
all right.
We'll get this one posted. Stay tuned for the cliffhanger for Who Shot JR.
Who did shut it there?
I
Who
can't.
did shoot him?
was it
I
in a
remember.
dream, Terry, or something like? What was the one where it was a dream?
But I just remember the summer.
Maybe we shouldn't do a spoiler anyway.
Yeah, we don't want to do a spoiler. We want to watch.
Spoil it.
That was the era. Remember Dynasty and Dallas and Falcon Crest. That was all that dramedy. Well, there wasn't really all those drama highfalutin. The precursor to the Kardashians.
Totally.
Anyway. All right. Well, post your comments below. Any pricing questions? What do you think? If Vinyasa Studios out there, what are you doing to control your product? Even Bikram Studios, what are you doing to control your product? What are you doing in terms of teacher development, teacher training? And yeah, let us know. As Josh said, if you want help with pricing, anything like that, get a coach. And what else? Anything else? Oh, the summit stuff will be coming out soon, so stay tuned. They're working on the summit details.
Oh my God, so exciting.
So definitely plan on coming. It's just to let you know, you can block it off right now because we did bump it. It's the week. It'll start Sunday, March 9th.
November.
In November 9th. The week of that will be the summit. So we'll be getting more details out about that. And anything else coming up? Yeah. All right. Well, Carol, have fun. Stay warm, Bridget. Great to see you again. And we will all see you in the YC.
Go do some yoga.